Officer Grady's furious voice rang through the courthouse corridor as he forcefully led Lena Harrow toward a small hearing room, accusing her of obstructing a police investigation. He barked out a series of exaggerated charges, his tone sharp with frustration. A group of onlookers stood frozen in disbelief, some murmuring that the officer had finally crossed the line. Lena, her thin wrists painfully restrained, met the crowd's gaze with unwavering determination. Despite her circumstances, her eyes held a quiet defiance, a silent vow that she would not be broken by yet another abuse of power. The air crackled with tension, as though the walls themselves sensed that an unavoidable reckoning was at hand. No one, not even Officer Grady, understood just how significant this confrontation would become. Earlier that day, Lena had been making her way to the courthouse beneath the relentless heat of a scorching summer afternoon. She walked with the steady resolve of someone well acquainted with the weight of time and responsibility. Her cane tapped lightly against the pavement, her pace unfaltering despite the oppressive sun. She had just finished delivering a homemade casserole to a sick neighbor and carried the now empty dish in her weathered hands when a distressed voice caught her attention near the parking lot of a small hardware store. An elderly man stood there, his face etched with worry as he searched his pockets and peered under nearby cars. "I can't find it," he muttered, his voice thick with frustration. His hands trembled as he looked around, lost and anxious. Lena instinctively stepped closer. "What have you lost, sir?" she asked gently. "My wallet," he admitted with a defeated shake of his head. "I had it just a moment ago, but now it's gone." One glance at his unsteady hands was enough for Lena to decide she had to help. She bent down, scanning the ground carefully. Within moments, she spotted a worn leather wallet, partially hidden beneath a discarded soda cup. Retrieving it, she handed it back to the man, whose relief was instant. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "You're a blessing." Lena offered a soft smile. "Anyone would have done the same," she replied, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. Her late husband, Samuel, had always believed that small acts of kindness were the threads that held society together, a belief Lena had carried with her for decades. With that brief exchange behind her, she continued toward the courthouse. The imposing structure loomed ahead, its towering columns and wide stone steps stark against the cloudless sky. It was meant to symbolize justice, yet Lena couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The older she got, the more she realized that justice often felt like an uphill battle, especially for people like her. At 72, Lena had endured her share of hardships, each one forging the quiet strength she carried within her. As she ascended the courthouse steps, a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. A tall, broad-shouldered police officer with a square jaw, his nameplate reading Grady, stood over a teenage girl. The girl, no older than 16, clutched her school backpack tightly, avoiding the officer's harsh glare. "Loitering," Grady snapped. "This is public property, not your playground." The girl stammered, her voice barely audible. Lena's steps slowed. She recognized the fear in the teenager's posture, the way her shoulders curled inward, bracing for whatever might come next. A familiar unease settled in Lena's stomach. Adjusting her grip on her cane, she stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Is there a problem here?" Grady turned sharply, his expression hardening at the interruption. "Stay out of this, ma'am," he snapped. "It doesn't concern you." Lena held his gaze. "She's not doing anything wrong. This is a public building. She has every right to be here." Grady's lip curled into a sneer. "You people," he muttered, "always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." A slow heat rose in Lena's chest. She had heard those words before, spoken with the same contempt, yet she refused to waver. "She's just a child," Lena said steadily. "Let her go." For a brief moment, Grady's grip on the girl's backpack loosened. Seizing the opportunity, the teenager bolted into the crowd of bystanders that had gathered nearby. Grady, his face flushed with anger, turned back to Lena. "You want to interfere?" he growled, seizing her arm in an iron grip. "Fine. You can explain yourself inside." A ripple of shocked gasps spread through the onlookers. A few voices of protest rose, but no one dared to intervene. Lena's heart pounded, yet she remained composed. "I have nothing to hide," she murmured. Grady marched her through the courthouse doors, his heavy boots striking sharply against the marble floor. The air inside was cooler, but the weight of countless stairs made it no less stifling. Some onlookers recognized Grady, whispering among themselves. His reputation clearly preceded him. Lena was led into a small hearing room where a handful of people sat in tense anticipation. Wasting no time, Grady rattled off a string of accusations: obstruction, disturbing the peace, even the absurd claim of resisting arrest. Each charge was more outrageous than the last, yet Lena remained impassive, her face unreadable. The court clerk, a sharp-eyed woman with an air of no-nonsense efficiency, cast Lena a brief, sympathetic glance as she recorded Grady's rant. Meanwhile, the officer squared his shoulders, clearly savoring his moment of dominance. His words dripped with condescension, his satisfaction evident in every syllable. Then, Judge Abernathy entered. His robes swayed gently as he took his seat, his keen eyes scanning the room with quiet authority. An older man, known for his sharp mind and fair judgment, he fixed Grady with a scrutinizing look. "Officer Grady," he said evenly, "please clarify how Mrs. Harrow posed a threat." Grady launched into a dramatic retelling, painting Lena as a disruptive agitator who had impeded his ability to enforce the law. His exaggerations were so blatant that Lena nearly smiled, but she maintained her stoic demeanor. Instead, she let her gaze drift over the spectators, some outraged, others hesitant, but all silent. Suddenly, the heavy courtroom doors swung open. A court officer entered, carrying a slim folder and looking visibly unsettled. He approached the bench and murmured something to Judge Abernathy. The judge's frown deepened as he tapped his gavel lightly. "We will take a brief recess," he announced. "The court will reconvene in 15 minutes." A wave of whispers swept through the room, speculation buzzing over what new information had emerged. Lena remained seated, hands neatly folded, while Grady paced near the prosecution's table, his confidence unwavering. When the hearing resumed, the tension in the room was almost tangible. Judge Abernathy cast a cool, measured look at Grady before turning his attention to Lena. "Mrs. Harrow," he said, "you may speak." Lena sat up straight, her voice firm yet calm. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding," she stated. "I stepped in to protect a young girl from unjust harassment, not to obstruct justice. I have spent my life upholding the law, not defying it." With deliberate care, she reached into her bag and retrieved a small leather case. Flipping it open, she revealed a badge. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "I am a retired federal investigator," she declared, her voice unwavering. "My career was dedicated to defending the vulnerable and ensuring justice was served. That girl committed no offense. Officer Grady's actions were not only inappropriate, but deeply concerning." Grady's complexion paled. His mouth opened as if to argue, but no words came. Judge Abernathy's expression darkened as he flipped through the folder the court officer had provided. "Officer Grady," he said, his voice heavy with authority. "Your conduct raises serious concerns. This court will not tolerate abuses of power, especially within these walls, where justice must always prevail. I am ordering an immediate review of your actions." He turned to Lena. "Mrs. Harrow, all charges against you are dismissed. The court extends its apologies." The room erupted into quiet applause. Grady's shoulders slumped, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of his disgrace. A bailiff stepped forward, escorting him out, as the reality of his downfall settled in. Outside, Lena descended the courthouse steps with quiet dignity. A few people approached her, offering gratitude and admiration. The teenage girl she had defended stood at a distance, wide-eyed with awe. Lena met her gaze with a small nod, a silent assurance that courage and kindness still mattered. The afternoon sun burned just as fiercely, yet the air felt lighter, as if the burden of injustice had lifted, even if only momentarily. Lena tightened her grip on her cane and resumed her walk. This battle had been won, but there would always be more to fight, and she was ready.